Miami Herald investigative reporter Julie Brown, that's Julie K. Brown if you encountered it in print, spent more than 2 years looking into the Jeffrey Epstein case, and she published a series of articles on his secret plea deal. Brown identified 80 of Epstein's alleged victims and spoke with about a dozen of them. Julie, good morning.
Good morning.
On the subject of those victims, you've spoken to them. You probably know them as well as anybody at this point. How are they reacting this morning?
Well, I think they're in shock, first of all. They were the first people that I called as soon as I had heard my first thought. I've stayed in close touch with them this whole case, and the fact that he was arrested has been a roller coaster for them, to say the least. They've been trying to find justice on this case for a very long time.
It was seen as though he beat the system in 2008 with this kind of easy sentence. Did he beat it again by taking his own life?
Well, they think so. They think that it's another example of how our criminal justice system is not only broken, but it seems to favor wealthy people who somehow seem to always be able to get away with things that regular people don't have those advantages.
I'm curious about the victims. I was talking to Oprah last night, who is a victim of sexual abuse herself, and I said, what more do victims want? The guy is now dead. There's nothing more that can happen. And she said, this had happened to you or your daughter, you would not be feeling that way. And I had to think about that for a second. You know, you're right. Can you understand why they still feel they were deprived?
Yes, because they've been fighting this for a decade. And remember, when this happened back in, 2006, 2007, now they're women, but they were teenagers, and they were treated like they were prostitutes. They were treated like they were not credible, because they would, these lawyers hired private investigators that, made their lives really miserable.
To discredit them.
Followed their families, ran one of their fathers off the road, And
what can't happen now, which might have happened, is a kind of Dr. Nasser moment with USA Gymnastics where the victims can confront their victimizer one after another.
So, Julie, the U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Berman has made a point of saying the investigation will continue. Where does this case go now?
Well, they're going to look at his accomplices, or so-called alleged accomplices. There was a lot of information, as you know, that was released just on Friday.
Yes.
About how this operation, now it was sort of released in a very strange way because it wasn't really in sequence, but because I studied all the other documents, I could kind of piece it together a little bit. But it sort of is the framework for a real sex trafficking operation. And now we know that they're not only just looking at the human trafficking part of it, they're also looking at the money trail, and they're looking at where his money is, how he got his money, and hoping that will lead them also down another path to finding who helped him.
If you were one of his accomplices at this point, would you be more nervous now that he is dead?
Well, yeah, yes, I think so, because Mr. Berman's going to have to start looking at other people, not that he wasn't before, but he's going to probably make a couple of these other people the centerpiece of his case now.
He killed himself allegedly after the release of some very damning documents about him. Was there anything in those documents that surprised you?
I think some of the names, we knew some of those names. They had been out there before because the police investigation had uncovered a lot of message pads. And, we also know Epstein had a black book with a lot of famous people's names on them. But this was really the first.
Any names in particular that surprised you?
Well, I think anytime you have someone as powerful as George Mitchell, for example.
The former senator.
Yeah, the former senator and Senate Minority Leader, and Bill Richardson, the governor of New Mexico. I think anytime, both of whom, by the way, all of these people have denied that they.
And have not been charged.
And have not been charged, and all of them have vigorously denied that they were involved. But when you have a couple of different depositions and you have this woman describing what happened and how it happened, and to some degree where it happened, I'm sure that's something that prosecutors are going to look at.
There are more documents to be released, Julie, correct?
That's correct.
You think more people will come forward?
It's hard to say. It depends on what they find with the suicide. At first I thought that.
The suicide. Do you believe that it was a suicide? There are a lot of questions about that as well. Like, was he set up to commit suicide, or did he actually take his life? A lot of questions about, and the timing of it. What is your take on it when you first heard it? What was your take?
Well, I thought he probably committed suicide, but then again, I you know, I covered Florida prisons for a very long time, and I know the way things work in prisons, and it's very easy to set something up. I'm not trying to fuel a conspiracy theory here at all, but it is very easy to set something up to look like a suicide. I'm not saying that happened, but I think we have to wait for the authorities to do their investigation first.
Wow.
All right, Julie Brown, thank you. Very good to have you at the
Thanks.
table.